Good morning, folks. My name is Anita Boness. I'm with Saba Software, and we are just having the attendees enter the room, and I'm going to give it about 30 seconds or so before we get started. All right then, so good morning officially. Welcome to day 3 of our experience here with the CLO conference. As I mentioned before, if you were just coming in, my name is Anita Boness. I'm speaking to you from sunny yet snowy Ottawa, Canada. Here it is, April the 22nd, and I'm definitely in Groundhog Day as we deal with the weather. So if you want to share with you what the weather is like where you're at in chat, just to get you engaged with the other attendees of the session, feel free. Here on day 3 of the conference, I'm sure you've got a lot of great insights from the sessions that we've had Monday and Tuesday rolling around in your head, and you're starting to think about how you're going to translate some of your own personal learnings and insights to the work that you do for your organizations following this conference, and how you're going to support your learners. This morning, I'm going to be talking about how we can enable critical skills within our organizations. I think in just about every session that I've attended so far in the conference, I've seen some tiebacks to what I'm going to share today as we talk about critical skills, future skills, enabling our people to deal with change, how change that is either planned or thrust upon us as learning professionals is change in the way that we think and how we approach providing learning and development for our employees. And so hopefully there's some tiebacks to much of what you've already learned and some takeaways that are practical for your own organization. So I've tried to structure the conversation today along these 5 buckets. Truthfully, I put together the agenda well before COVID-19 hit and changed our world at work. And but I think some of the points around the evolving workplace and preparing our people for what's coming next are still relevant from my initial plans for today's conversations. But I think a new item that I added to my agenda is really why now, today, the weeks ahead, or really the right time to start to identify those critical skills, or maybe in your organization, you call them future skills, so that we're setting our people up for success and also setting our businesses up for success with what is coming next. We're going to talk about some new approaches to building critical skills or future skills, however you choose to categorize them in your planning as L&D professionals. And we're going to set the stage with some real world stories to give you ideas of where you can start or some context around where you can potentially make these connections. And these stories come from our experience at Saba with our customers, but they are definitely technology agnostic, right? So regardless of what your learning technology is, I think there's something in here that you can take away and put into practice in your own organizations. So we'll wrap things up with some tips on how you can get started. So I'm going to put out a little bit of a provocation. I approach these types of conferences as a great continuous learning opportunity for me. And I always, jot down some key aha moments out of every presentation, as I'm sure you do too. And so I started thinking about, what are some critical skills or some future skills that I've identified that I'm going to take away and put into practice from my CLO experience. I grabbed this funny meme because it seems that, so many of us are thinking about how we can take this time that's been given to us where maybe we are more introspective and working internal within our organizations, or how we have to pivot on a dime and do something new or different. Me presenting to you at a symposium through Zoom is definitely something that's a critical skill takeaway that I'm going to be taking forward. But maybe, think if there's any aha moments that you're taking forward as a new skill or a future skill, and start sharing them in the chat for see as we go through. And maybe you'll have insights as we go through today's presentation as well. So feel free to share and fill that chat line as a way to engage and be social through your learning experience today. So I wanted to start originally this conversation around some key things that we know about our evolving workplaces. We've had some great stories first 2 days from many different industries, many different sectors, and many different companies and contexts. And I think what is clear is that, you know, everybody is experiencing change in some form. And, you know, whether that change is being driven by technology, digital transformation, you know, evolving how we work, how we interact with each other, how we are building more people-centric approaches to getting things done, collaboration, building on the diversity of our people, stimulating innovation from being quirky or different, or through trying on new ways of thinking. These are all things that I think characterize many of our work experiences. And it's providing us the opportunity to enable our people in different ways, to empower them in different ways, and to really tap into the power that we have to transform our businesses. But one slide that I added probably a week ago to really set the stage is some change we plan for, but some change is thrust upon us. I don't think any of us planned for what has happened over the last 5 or 6 weeks. I don't know if any of us really had the foresight to be fully equipped to support a work from home experience, a virtual way of either working together or delivering service or solutions to our customer base. And it throws us into a bit of a state of panic, anxiety, or, you know, for some of us, opportunity to try new things on. And so really, when I started thinking about future skills, the future of work is really here now. Now is the time for us to, you know, put into practice some of those skills that we've been maybe developing in a planful way to support our businesses going forward. Maybe it's an opportunity to quickly try on without maybe approaching things from our traditional L&D paradigm or change management paradigm, and just go in, give it a go, see what happens, and iterate. Regardless of how we want to approach that, you know, the future of work is here. Even without COVID and being thrust into, you know, truly an era of digital transformation, we have seen an increase of the impact that artificial intelligence, robotics, sensors, technology in just about any industry, how that is impacting how things get done, how that is impacting some of the priorities and concerns that our C-level leaders have for our businesses, how we're automating or transforming projects in services and in manufacturing. And this technology causes some angst with respect to our employees around the security of the jobs and the relevance of their skills. But the reality is here. We talked about the impact that this is going to have down the line, but we see that impact now. And we also see that, you know, when we look at how work gets done and how we map and plan for in our careers. I remember being at a conference 2 years ago and talking about the rise of the gig economy and the alternative workforce. But the reality is the alternative workforce really isn't alternative anymore. We know that we've got an increasingly growing portion of our workforce that are on contract or freelance or SME basis. Folks have side hustles on the side. And, you know, a lot of these freelancers have a lot of optimism around, you know, what lies ahead for them. You know, and what that means for how we get work done and how we work together with our people is, you know, how we think about augmenting skills through temporary assignments, job shadowing, bringing in the expertise that we need as and when, and also a recognition that we may not have people for the entire tenure of their career, or even, dare I say, 5 to 6 years. You know, maybe it's 1 to 2 years and then we move on to the next thing to further develop our range and our capabilities. This stat is almost out of date because of, you know, what's happening right now, not just in the US, but here in Canada too. I look at it from a Canadian perspective. When we look at our frontline workers, we know that as automation, as the world of work changes, we are going to require some form of upskilling that is needed to support the transformations that are happening in our workplace through technology. And when we also look at how work gets done, we know that the shelf life of our skills is fairly limited. 20% of skills, this is from Gartner, 20% of skills today will be irrelevant within 3 years. But who knows, maybe 3 to 10 years from now, those skills will suddenly be relevant again. We had a conversation earlier this week, and it was actually one that I'd had with a client 2 weeks ago around how before we were talking about everybody needs to learn Python. Everybody in our development teams, we need to learn Python. I learned COBOL programming in university many years ago. I'm not going to say how many years ago, but many years ago. But then all of a sudden, because of demands that we have in government on some of our legacy systems, there's a hot demand for COBOL programmers all of a sudden. So skills ebb and flow, and the types of jobs that we will have will change too. I took the statistic from the World Economic Forum that 65% of primary school students will work in jobs that don't yet exist. Because when you put that statistic out, that causes a little bit of angst and uncertainty. But if we pause and think about it, and you think about maybe if you're mid-career like I am, what you thought you might be doing 20 years after graduating from university, if the job title that you have today or how you do work today was something that existed 20 years ago, the answer to that is probably no. I mean, I still have interesting conversations with my parents when I try to explain what it is that I do, because in their mindset, they have the paradigm of jobs and occupations from the time that they went to school and from their workplace experience. This is an ever-changing context in terms of how we do work, and it requires a certain focus on how we develop skills over time. And I think sometimes when we think about skills of the future, we tend to hone in on those technology skills when we talk about digital transformation and we talk about hard skills. I don't like the term soft skills, but you think about broad capabilities. There is a huge demand out there, obviously, for the tech skills, but there is still increasingly a demand on what we call soft skills, or more behavioral and interpersonal effectiveness competencies. And when we think about how we handle and work through change and innovate with one another, obviously, if we know that the hard skills have a shelf life, building our capabilities in those soft capabilities like adaptability, culture fit, collaboration, customer focus, those are really where we want to focus. I found that really interesting. Had from a panel discussion on day one was thinking about how these skills in contexts like frontline healthcare and in fast food industry, when we were talking to the two folks from the healthcare organizations and then the rep from McDonald's in panel discussion on day one, going back to those key skills of communication, collaboration, teamwork, customer focus. Those are critical skills that we want to hone in on and go for. Even though we know that things are changing, even though we've probably been planning in some form or another, it does cause anxiety at our C-level. And it's important for us as L&D professionals to recognize this, that when we think about the things that keep our CEOs up at night, obviously the fear of economic slowdown is there. I mean, the fear is now. Again, these statistics from PricewaterhouseCoopers predate the current situation, but we know that the movement of business to new economies and focusing inward was already a priority for 2020. This abrupt change in our economy is obviously going to heighten that focus and the concerns that we're not going to experience the growth, that we may not have enough creativity to reinvent the business that we're in, and that we need to develop new skills and capability in our workforce to succeed. And then there's also going to be anxiety amongst our people, fear of job loss, fear of what's ahead. Maybe we're on furlough, but what happens when we come back? Do we have access to the adequate training and support that's necessary to keep or find a new job if that is there? Or how is this going to change how I get things done? And we know that employees intrinsically believe that it's their responsibility to reskill themselves, to take control of their own development. How can we provide the opportunities to them that is going to make that development into our business? So let's talk about some approaches that we can take within our own organizations to support this context, support the needs of our business partners, our stakeholders that quite honestly make the decisions around our budgets when maybe things are a little bit tight, but then also the needs of our people so that we're able to drive our businesses forward and what some new approaches may be. Well, the good news is we already know that our roles as L&D professionals have changed. And we're at the forefront of that change, I think, by participating in industry events like this, by looking at new ways to empower our people, new learning pathways, new paradigms, new approaches to learning, even long before what has happened in the last 5-6 weeks. We've started to embrace technologies and approaches that enable learning to be self-driven, that are personalized to the needs and the motivations of our people, that is anytime and anywhere, that takes advantage of social and collaborative technologies and gets us applying the knowledge from those development experiences directly to the work we do to drive the performance outcomes that have been set out for us. We've already started moving in this direction. So how can we take it further to start to build skills of the future, or those critical skills that are going to ensure future viability, and preparing ourselves for what's coming next through upskilling and through reskilling. If we get this right and we look at why this is critical for us as professionals, we know that if we take a proactive approach to upskilling and reskilling, it's going to create a more skilled, higher performing workforce. It's going to help us evolve and advance the careers of our people, both for what may be ahead in our own organizations, but maybe also for where they want to direct their careers, even if that is outside of our business. That can create a pool of internal hires, or even, forget the internal hiring right now, people with flexibility and range to move into different roles, work on different projects, work in different contexts because they have that broad set of capabilities. That can help improve our employee brand, right? So we still may have a war on talent for some of these critical skills. If we're investing and building and supporting the upskilling and reskilling of our people, that's good for us. It improves retention and it creates people with more range. So with this, I'm going to give like a little shameless plug to one of the activities that I've been doing. I will fully admit, I gave a skim read of this book back in the January, February timeframe. But now that I seem to have a little bit more time on my hands, I have given it a full range. So this is a great book. If you want to have some new insights on why creating range, broad capabilities that layer on top of deep subject matter expertise creates the ability to thrive in changing or not very nice work contexts, this is a really good book. And chances are, because it's been on the top of the New York Times reading list, this might be something that your CEO is also reading. So give it a shot. It's really around, creating those capabilities that create range and flexibility to move into new contexts. You might get some good insights from that book. I'm going to pause on this slide for a minute to help us conceptualize, what we mean when we talk about upskilling versus reskilling, and I'm going to add a third in here for reinvention. This was a chart that we at Saba pulled together with Josh Burson earlier this year in a webinar that he presented on our behalf. And when we think about, how reskilling, upskilling, and even reinvention takes shape around different roles, different situations that may drive that, this can give you a good example. So upskilling, great example is learning new technologies and tools to increase our productivity. That is really where the change is. It's in how we get things done, and this upskilling is to drive our productivity further. Maybe for us as L&D professionals, that upskilling is, learning how to work with virtual ILT technologies so that we can still continue to deliver our great ILT programs, but in new ways. Reskilling is really where we skill up our people to drive innovation and growth, expanding what it is that we're doing. I think from an L&D context, pivoting from being focused as an instructional designer for ILT or e-learning to be a more generalist, making those smoothies. I'm using the analogy from the blended learning approach earlier this week, where we've got smoothies going on and we are looking at the right modality to create learning experiences. It's innovating and growing the reach that we have and the impact that we have as L&D professionals. And then when we look at reinvention, these are those quick pivots, or what we need to do in order to survive. So thinking about how to change on a dime traditional delivery models or programs and curriculum, and being able to quickly shift to deliver and create experiences that are new. We may also say moving away from, as an L&D professional, from traditional design to curation, or working in new ways to curate digital learning experiences as core to survival. But here's a really nice way that you can potentially look at what the needs of your business people are. These slides are going to be downloaded in our SABA booth, and we're happy to share this with you. It's a good anchor for you to have as a point to have questions with your business partners around identifying those critical skills or those future skills that you need. I actually even use this chart to explain to my husband, who's a physiotherapist. He's a small business owner, he's an entrepreneur, and obviously was shut down and work from home. While they are still an essential skill, everything seems to be moving away to from face-to-face appointments to telehealth. While physiotherapists have been delivering service for years, hands-on, face-to-face. So they are in a survival reinvention paradigm shift as they're learning new skills, they're developing their virtual collaboration capabilities, and they're delivering their services in an entirely new model in order to survive and ride out the work from home era that we are now living in. So that's one way I've added value to my home-based conversations during these last 5-6 weeks of shutdown. When it comes to an L&D point of view, really where we start, where we focus in on, is around the choices that we need to make, the needs of our business. These are 6 questions that we feel at SABA you can ask yourselves, you can ask your business partners. If you wanted to layer these in, maybe if you took something away from the presentation yesterday on GM's design thinking as questions to get the conversation going in your organization, how do we mobilize our talent to capitalize on the opportunities or the business problems that are facing us right now? What are the most important skills to our organization's future? Should we hire new roles or bring in contingent workers with the right technical skills? Or do we want to upscale our employees internally so that they can fill those needs or be even more effective in their current roles? Are employee experiences that nurture skills and behaviors in a way that's meaningful to the motivators of the people while growing their careers at the same time? So connecting the needs of the business to the needs of the employees to keep them with us? Or do we need to reskill tenured employees to take on different responsibilities as our business transforms? So these are all things that we can think about, wrestle, and use as a way for us to prioritize where we can go. We've got 4 stories that we've captured in a short little ebook that's available in the SABA booth in our virtual exhibition hall that you can download following the presentation today. It's also available on our resources section of our website. But we thought that these were good real life examples of how organizations have taken on these challenges, approached them in different ways, but they're all stories about how they've built critical skills for the future success of their businesses. So we're going to start with the story around reskilling in times of growth and transformation. So forget COVID, let's talk about how we can reskill in times of change or growth. So almost every organization in every industry has had to adopt at some point or another to a significant change in their workplace or in their business context. And that requires not only new ways of working, new ways of delivering service or product or value, but it also can involve new skill sets and job roles to assist in that transformation. And so reskilling initiatives in these scenarios are critical to ensuring that our people have the right new skills to take on those new roles or new ways of getting things done in order to remain competitive and to manage the workplace transformation. We have a great story with Donnelly, who is a publicly traded leading global provider of multi-channel business communication services and marketing solutions. They started off as a preacher and have evolved to being one of the largest multi-channel communications organizations. And they work with about 88% of the global Fortune 500. So great success story of an organization that has changed and pivoted over their 150-year history. They reinvented their business and the scope of its workforce in the past 10 years to take advantage of digital transformation, new channels of marketing communication as we moved away from print, and to really expand what it is that they're able to offer. And some of that growth came from entry into new markets, new services, but also through merger and acquisition. So different contexts to why things are changing. Irrespective to where the change came from, the employees needed upskilling and reskilling. And so their L&D team built a common skills framework of core competencies, core capabilities that really tied all their divisions together and started to articulate what skills they believed were essential to driving their business forward. And they make no bones about it. They talk about this in their communications. I took an example here of a recent blog that they posted out, how this weaves into even their careers language, that they communicate out to prospective employee candidates, etc. And how they got this done was through really what we captured with them as 4 steps. Delivering learning and reskilling opportunities across all areas of their business, from manufacturing to creative to web operations, and tailoring the education that they were delivering to their people based on the current needs and where their people may want to grow their careers. They created global communities and skill-based groups to extend and reinforce the core competencies across their workforce, to take advantage of mentorship and coaching and social learning through examples and stories from others. They built a repeatable model to ensure consistently high level of delivery across all business units and cultures globally, taking advantage of technology to help support that consistency. And then they created a single hub of access to all company compliance and skill-based learning, along with results tracking. That's where the learning tech came in. Now, if you want more information on this particular case study, there's a case study in the virtual kiosk, as well as a really cool video that explains how they did it in a very planful approach. Another way that we've seen organizations really approach how we need to nurture those behavioral skills or soft skills or core interpersonal competencies and tie them to what the organization needs in order to be successful moving forward is to look at how we can articulate how we walk the talk of our company values through strategic behavioral competencies critical to workplace success. So things like adaptability, innovation, teamwork, prioritization, learning agility, and supporting those as a way of how we want work to be performed or how this will enable us to drive organizational change. One organization that we have worked with at Saba that has done a really good job of this. In the UK, we are a global company, so some examples from across the pond is with Virgin Money. So maybe you've heard of Virgin Airlines, everybody's heard of Mr. Richard Branson. He has financial services, or the company has a financial services arm in UK, Australia, and South Africa. And one of the ways that they felt that they would be able to move forward in the retail banking industry is to take a very strong approach to customer satisfaction and ensuring that everybody is better off through what they are doing to manage their finances and their banking. And the drive to make everybody better off extends to their employees as well. So mandatory training has always been a requirement of the company, but now we're doing training in a way that connects people's performance and development with behavioral skills that support the organizational values and make it really a great place of work. So to do that, first they set up a culture of feedback and recognition for peer-to-peer recognition for demonstrating the values in action. Offering workshops and e-learning through their learning platform to explore and deepen the understanding of why certain values and related behavioral skills connect to how they want to drive the business forward. So making those connections, using the capabilities of online coaching and mentoring to help support the development of these skills and foster growth. So people may not be co-located in the same branch, but giving them access to a coach mentor and not necessarily from a people leader to help drive these skills forward. Driving knowledge and skill sharing across the organizations with social tools, employee profiles that are highlighting strengths and goals and development plans. You know, giving a blueprint for this is how this employee has developed these skills or brings these skills to the work that they're doing. And this might connect with some suggested development activities that you can go and explore to help personalize your development plan. And then tapping into the reporting and analytics through their learning platform to give them insight into how they are doing on developing these skills, the uptake of what they are serving out to their stakeholders, their employees, you know, what's working, what's not, and then where they may need to go in with some more targeted support at the individual, departmental, or org level. They're really tapping into the insights that they're able to gather through this integrated approach to see what more they could be doing, where maybe results are not hitting the mark, or where one team is doing really, really well, and there might be some lessons learned that they can take forward into their plans. The third story really focuses on social learning and collaboration. So what we're doing, even though I can't see you, is social learning and collaboration. We're sharing stories from the field. You know, if we were together face to face over cocktails, I'm sure that collaboration would go further. But, you know, we're at a really nice turning point where our social learning and collaboration, we're starting to do that in new ways. And we know that for many of us, this social aspect of learning is really key to our motivation. It's one of the reasons why we've held so tightly on to instructor-led training, because we like to be with other people. We like to be with people that have common interests and desires and are on similar journeys to us. Well, we can tap into that innate desire as humans to be social as we learn, to drive innovation, to deepen engagement and connection to how things get done while reinforcing those core critical skills that we need to be successful. The story profiled in the ebook is with a real estate organization in the UK, countrywide. So they're throughout the UK, and they have about 14,000 professionals working in over 500 offices. And they wanted to shift their organizational culture that's based heavily on sales and is more focused on people and the people driving the business forward. And so to do that, they felt, well, from an L&D perspective, let's focus on how we can drive collaboration, drive teamwork, and start to make that connection between this collaborative approach to performance and development. And, you know, while they started off with their learning journeys, as many of us, you know, content that supports compliance, certifications, licenses, you know, that hard side of the L&D world that we have to maintain and track. You know, how can we extend what we're doing to extend and expand the breadth of our people's expertise and skills and learn from each other? So they took a very targeted approach to how they wanted to do this, and they started actually within a subset of their organization as a pilot project, if you will, to create communities, groups, share ideas on how they're progressing through their learning pathways and curriculum, communicating out to the business the impact that these learning initiatives were having, you know, being very transparent with what was working, what wasn't, sharing out analytics with regional directors in terms of how they were closing gaps on the skills-based learning, who was participating, who was collaborating, who was, you know, seeing the results, so that we were empowering the regional directors to really help their teams get involved and embrace it and see the value of it. And they, you know, byproduct of this, not only were they able to develop skills, but they saw a drop in their attrition rates. They were able to do some follow-up surveys to take a look at that drop in turnover, and were able to cross-connect it to the new approach towards skills development, collaboration, and knowledge sharing. And so now when they go out from their L&D plans and strategies, compliance still has a requirement, but about 80% of their learning is now at the skill level development focused and looking at those skills for how to get things done. So there's a question that came in through the chat around, you know, how have you motivated employees to engage in the social platform, sharing, et cetera. I know people are busy. You know, we think about that too. Feedback, impressions, you know, gamification of learning, badging. For some people, it's a very strong motivator to be seen as a subject matter expert, tapping on those people and asking them if they would like to be a champion of your learning program. One of the things that we've done successfully here at SABA actually is created a badge, a certification of being, you know, your internal SABA Life, that's our learning platform, champion. You complete your certification, but then you take it out to your teams to encourage them to get on board and to get involved too. So lots of different ways that we can think outside of the box to incent people or get them in, or tap into what might be their personal motivators for, you know, being that subject matter expert, being that go-to person, and rewarding people who get things done. Last one that we want to cover, and I'm cognizant of time, because I know there's other great sessions today that we want to get to, is, you know, making that connection between performance, feedback, and learning skills gaps. This is really the sweet spot that I've built the last, I don't know, 6 years of my career around, is, you know, learning that drives and unlocks the performance results that our stakeholders seek. And for high performing organizations, this was a key theme at the October symposium in Chicago, is, you know, how do we unlock these performance results? How do we hone in on what we're doing in L&D to drive the business results? And how L&D feeds into that continuous performance management cycle of what are performance expectations, how is work going to get done, what are the development needs of our people in order to meet those expectations, and how can we set them up for success in the roles they are in today and prepare them for what the performance expectations will be for the next role that they aspire to take on. So it really aligns those skills and capabilities to performance. The example that we have in the reference materials that I'm going to talk about today is with an engineering services company, JMT, in the US, and they provide support to public and private organizations. Their workforce, you know, highly skilled STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and math-based workforce. They have a really strong culture of empowering their people. The business itself is employee owned, so I think that helps support that culture and that sense of accountability, and we're in it together. And we all pitch in to contribute to our organizational growth. Now, obviously, STEM-based industries are directly impacted by digital transformation, the pace of technological change. And so to help drive growth in their business and meet the changing needs of their clients, they're always changing, the leadership team at JMT recognized that they needed to develop a culture that supports learning, addresses skills gaps, really creates a sustainable cycle of development connected to performance. And so how they did that was, you know, tracking of technical credentials and expertise, like that is foundational, but then also ensuring that there is a program in place for ongoing skills development, those skills that are critical for the business as a professional services and engineering firm. So if we think maybe if you were in the session yesterday around continuous learning and how early in our careers we have deep expertise and then we have broad capabilities that are developed over time, but really what we might want to move towards is creating some of those pathways that reinforce that deep expertise at ongoing touch points throughout our careers. This is what JMT is building. They have also supported all of their people leaders in how to have effective performance and development conversations. So, you know, I remember the very first time that I was put into a position of leading people, and even though I'd gone to school, I'm an HR professional, I know the value in having performance conversations, this was not something that was easy to roll off my tongue and easy for me as a manager to have a conversation around. JMT recognized that and actually invested in training for all their frontline leaders. They refresh that on an ongoing basis as well, around how do we properly set and discuss performance expectations, connect it to required development, give performance feedback throughout the year, and create these ongoing cycles of conversations. Supported through check-ins, regular conversations that talk about what's working, what's not, how can I help, what development do we need, and build that as part of the culture. And they use the metrics from this integrated system and their learning and performance tech to demonstrate the direct impact that their skills development and feedback focused culture is having on the business's objectives and their growth. They've created that clear line of sight. It's just a creative way of using their learning tech and integrating it with their performance objectives, and it's creating significant business benefit. So just going back to wrap things up about where you can get started in your organization, I'm going to go back to the slide that I showed earlier. Think about what choices you need to make. We can't boil the ocean. There's probably going to be something of each of these 6 questions that crops up in your organization, but maybe prioritize where your biggest need is first. Consult with your business partners and really hone in on where you have the biggest opportunity to move the needle in your organization. And if we look at new approaches to developing critical skills in our organization, it's actually going to benefit us as L&D professionals as well. It can help us be more adaptable to the needs of our business, move away from our traditional paradigms of delivering learning and development opportunities to our business. It can increase the collaboration across our teams and also with our business partners. And it can improve, our brand as professionals within the organization while contributing at the same time to improving the employer brand of our business, right? We know that L&D opportunities and a commitment to our people's success is a huge differentiator. And we also know that if we get this right, we'll be able to retain that great skill set that is building our organizational bench strength over time, and ideally set us up to face head on whatever comes our way, whether it's planned or whether it's not. So if I was just going to sum it up, takeaways: build your strategy. Time is now for future-proofing your organization. Collaborate with your stakeholders. Leverage your learning technologies. Talk to your technology provider, regardless of who it is. It doesn't have to be Saba, but we've all got stories to share and can help you chart your course on how the technology can support what you're doing. And as always, learn from your industry peers. There's time for a couple questions. I've got one question that came in from Babby. Are there examples where these critical skills have been embedded in undergrad programs to make them more job ready? So we talked about this, well, not I talked about this. This was actually a topic of conversation in one of the sessions yesterday. I think undergrad programs focus on that deep expertise, the technical skills, the hard skills. I think that there should be a bit more collaboration, I think, between industry and post-secondary education or higher learning to ensure that we're graduating folks with the right skills to enable them to succeed. I think when it comes to specific occupations, absolutely, there's lots of examples of this. But when we look at innovation, adaptability, communication, those soft skills, I think there's still some work to be done. And I think that's where we as the business world have an opportunity to start developing early in an employee's career and provide them multiple points. There's obviously a logical progression to these soft skills, and they're all able to be developed over time. So hiring for where people have experience and then charting them on their course might be the answer that we've got. Okay, so as I mentioned, we've got an ebook that's available in our virtual booth. We're happy to answer any questions that you may have. I'll go over and wait in the wings in the chat area there too. I too am participating in the conference, and you know, seek me out. I'm on LinkedIn, Anita Bonas, and I'm happy to hear any further insights that you may have. All right. I'm just going to take one quick look to see if there's anything that came in else from Q&A, but I think we're good. So thanks everybody for your time today.